Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to this afternoon's session with the Super Sandra, who's the training lead for the Coroner's Court Support Service. I'm absolutely delighted that Sandra's been able to join us here in the studio to talk a little bit about the work that we do in terms of training, how we support our volunteers and how we take training forward as within the organisation. Good afternoon to you, Sandra.
Good afternoon, Paul. Yes, it's lovely to be here and be able to talk about training. As you know, I'm very passionate about the subject, and as an organisation, we need to make sure that our volunteers are well trained, shall we say, to make sure that they are able to deliver that service.
Great. Well, before we go into the session, the format is a question and answer session. I just wanted to ask you a few questions so that we can know a little bit more about you.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could ask, and if they're too personal questions, we can move over them. But often we see a cat or cats moving around in the background, and can you just tell us a little bit more about the family of cats in your house?
Yes, that's true, Paul. I do actually have 4 cats. They range in age from 15, which is my black cat called Sally, and I call her my witch's cat because she's a very petite cat, doesn't like people and spends most of the time in the wardrobe. So I think she's only appeared on camera about once. My brother and sister cats, Basil and Bridget, are about 4 years old, and they again were rescued. Basil was nearly Boris, but fortunately we opted for Basil. So quite a character, but a typical boy, a bit of a bossy cat, really, I think. And then the newest addition, which has appeared on camera, is Josie, who is just 7 months old, and she again was a rescue cat and quite a character.
Super. And do you have any favourites, or they're all equally loved?
They're all my favourites, Paul.
Okay, and I just observed that you've got the Christmas star in the background and Christmas lights, and you're looking very Christmassy yourself. And so can you just tell us what you're doing for Christmas?
Yes, well, Christmas is sort of a bit up in the air in as much that obviously, we can meet family and so on. And my younger daughter lives with me, so she will be here Christmas, and I believe her boyfriend will be joining us. And my older daughter, who is a teacher, got engaged during lockdown, and her fiance is a police officer. And I'm hoping that they're joining me on Christmas Day as well. Unfortunately, my mother is quite elderly, and I know there's a lot of people in a similar situation. So it's a bit up in the air whether she will actually be joining us on Christmas or not.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. We'll move on to the first question. So what makes a good training session, Sandra?
That's a very good question, Paul. And, I think people, the best judge to actually answer that are people that are actually within a training session. But in my experience, I think one of the key things and the most important thing is to ensure that your delegates, the volunteers, are comfortable and feel that they're in a safe environment, so that they're free to participate and to share their experiences. And, I find when I'm training that there's a lot of experience within the room from volunteers because, they've applied to us, they've come through that interview process, and they have a lot to share and, a lot to give us. So I think we need to sort of, recognise that and acknowledge it. I think it's also important to make sure that we are clear with the outcomes that we want to achieve through the training, and to have good communication skills and check people's understanding. And sometimes that might mean adapting our own personal style as a trainer, so that we can, approach the subject matter sensitively and deliver it at a pace that, everybody can understand. People learn in different ways, Paul. I mean, some people, they learn by seeing, sort of things written down or on the screen. Some people, they learn by hearing and talking about things, and other people actually learn by doing. So, I think it's really important to encompass all those things within a training session, try and make sure that, we get the best out of everybody and everybody has the same opportunity.
Okay. So you adapt your style for the people that you're training in terms of the different people that come into the training groups?
Yes, definitely. You know, as I said, there's nothing worse than having somebody within the group, and you can see that they've got perhaps experiences to to be able to share. So it's about drawing out those experiences and doing those exercises that will help make them contribute. And sometimes, small group work will perhaps make people feel a lot more comfortable to actually share. And those exercises add, an awful lot to their experiences, I think.
Okay. So can we just step it back a bit? What does the CCS training course look like? How is it delivered? What's the format of it?
Well, initially, after, I think I'd like to sort of take it back even further than the 3-day, in as much that when volunteers approach us and are interviewed, there is, a lengthy process to, sort of make sure that they are comfortable with the actual role. So it does involve attending court and observing various kinds of inquests, so that they can see what the role entails. They then will shadow an existing volunteer, and then the 3-day training actually kicks in. So during that time, we will cover things such as the inquest process. We will cover things along communication skills. We will talk about different models of grief, because it's really important for people to be able to, understand that, somebody may approach them in one way, and it could be because of the grief situation they're in. And to understand that a lot of confusion for people, it's a strange environment. They may come in blame, or they may just feel that they're just totally overwhelmed by it. And we try and encompass all of that within the training.
Okay. And in terms of follow-up support, do you provide after the training 3-day course to our volunteers?
Well, when they go back to the court, they will either continue to shadow or be shadowed themselves, so that they can actually, learn from, the volunteer, and they can put themselves in that situation, and they have somebody with them. Once they're at that stage where they feel comfortable, the coordinator will go to court and will observe them and hopefully sign them off. But throughout all of this, the team of volunteers within their home court, the coordinator, and any member of staff really is available to be able to support them. The regular team meetings as well, I would mention, because we do top-up training. Again, we try and link that into sort of national days, national awareness days. For example, Suicide Prevention Day, we may actually try and do a sort of a training session on suicide, maybe getting another organisation to come in. So there's lots of ways that we continue to support our volunteers, once they've actually done that training.
Okay, that's really useful. Now, I'm just thinking, reflecting on the last, since in 9 months, since March, or, in terms of going back, what's changed in terms of training since the lockdown or the pandemic? How has CCS evolved its training to meet the needs of volunteers, or have you delivered any training?
That's a really interesting question, Paul, and there's a lot of organisations in a very similar situation to us. Our training has predominantly been face-to-face, and we got to that stage, and I know of one particular volunteer who was interviewed the day the first lockdown was announced. So she was interviewed and accepted onto training, except we couldn't deliver any training. So what we've done is we have looked at the 3-day training, and we have adapted one of the days to online training, and we have just piloted that. We're hoping that there will be other areas of the training, for example, the top-up training, that we can move online. But most interesting, and I think one of the main things that I feel really sort of proud of, really, in a way, is that we have just delivered training via Zoom to 120 volunteers.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people, and it was very interesting, actually, and I have to say a big thank you to all the volunteers that did come forward for that training, because it is a new arena, it's using new technology, and that can bring with it its own anxieties. But it worked fantastically well, and the feedback that we've received has been absolutely amazing.
Okay. So in terms of the training material, is it for the, I understand it's the Tennessee, sorry, in terms of the outreach service or the support service, what's it called? Just to go back over that again.
It's the telephone support service, the TSS, and it is about volunteers that are based in our local courts, and it's about them actually providing local information and knowledge via the telephone about their local courts. We obviously have the helpline, which I know was a fantastic session that Sam chaired on the helpline itself. But, you know, there could be somebody who is on the helpline up in Carlisle who wouldn't necessarily know about the systems and the local court in Truro. So by having local volunteers that are available on the telephone support service, we feel that it will help allay some of the anxiety that people attending inquests may feel. You know, things like, I don't know where I'm going to be able to park the car. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the court. I know myself, with visiting different courts and also different training venues, sometimes it's really difficult to find. And to be able to speak to somebody who says, you know, you walk down this road and on the left you will see that there's a W.H. Smith's or whatever. You know, it can allay that anxiety. They know what to look for. They know what to expect when they walk into the building.
Okay, well, that's really useful in terms of adapting our training material to provide an additional localised service for courts. And I know that will be very warmly welcomed, and to equip our existing volunteers and new volunteers with that training is wonderful news. Can you just, this is a question that often is posed to us. Do you know kind of how much it costs to train volunteers? You know, what are the financial costs? Or
it does cost quite a lot, actually. There's a lot of hidden costs that people don't really realise. And I know we have been fortunate in getting funding for some of our training. I know that's your area of expertise, Paul. So, I mean, I'm sure you can enlighten us where we've obtained some funding. But you know, the hidden costs are, you know, you have staff costs for travelling and time. You have the volunteers travelling time. You have the resources. You have the admin. You know, thank God for admin is all I say as a trainer. You know, getting out all that information beforehand and advising people of where the training venues are. So there's the hidden cost of producing all the documentation. So, you know, there is an awful lot of costs involved in actually putting on training.
Okay, I was asking that question because we are funded through the National Lottery to deliver that training, and so we appreciate their support. But you're the person that delivers the training, so we thank you for that, Sandra, as the training lead. We often talk about the quality of the training material and how well it's been delivered, and the feedback that we get from volunteers saying it's excellent when they do go onto the training. But how do we actually know that the quality of the material that we use is up to a certain standard, or you know, why do we think we're better than other organisations in terms of our? So I'm just blowing your own trumpet there.
Well, because we are, but no, we are. Our training is accredited by OCN, Open College Network. So, you know, it is recognised. We do evaluations at the end of our training, and consistently we do score highly from our participants who, you know, find it is fit for purpose. We regularly review it to make sure that it is, and to encompass any changes. And I think, if I may, just sort of, if you will indulge me, would like to just read you something that I received from a volunteer. It was a card that was sent to me, and this was sent to me early in 2018. And when I joined CCSS, I attended a training in the December before I actually started work in the January. And I was very impressed compared to other organisations, you know, about the training. And then I sort of came to deliver it myself. And this was a card that I had from a volunteer at the end of the training session, which I did quite early on, probably one of my first ones, actually, which says, "Dear Sandra, throughout my professional career, I have sat through many long, tedious, boring, factual and staged training days. Be assured, CCSS training does encompass factual. The other categories, no. Well planned, balanced, ease and light-hearted laughter, personal touches, lots of smiles, whilst not losing focus of the aims of the training. It takes special skills to keep a group engaged and be focused. So it goes on, but I think that's the main point, that somebody's obviously had a lot of experience of training courses in the past, and felt that they wanted to send that little card through, which I was really proud of it, and it made me feel great.
It sounds like a job well done when you get feedback from people that actually taking the time and effort to fill out a card and send that to you. I think that's a really good piece of feedback. I think just my own observations of the training team, I think you bring a lot of experience into the organisation in terms of your background in training. And I think, if you wanted to say a little bit about kind of your training background or, what you bring to CCS.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, I mean, I've attended numerous training courses, and I think one of the things that we do is we remember what not to do, I think, as a trainer, as to what actually worked and what actually didn't. And back in the early days of training, there was really only 3 types of training, and that was induction, on the job and off the job. Induction in my early days consisted, many years ago, consisted of a thick booklet, and somebody standing at the front of the room actually reading the booklet to you, basically. So little interactive. And then training sort of moved on to the next stage where technology started to come into its own, and PowerPoint. Everybody was PowerPoint mad. So we suddenly became sort of death by PowerPoint. I've sort of learned from that we need to really mix it up. And I think we can all think back and think, oh God, that was a terrible training session. I didn't learn anything from it. I didn't feel comfortable talking to people, or whatever it may be. So I then sort of progressed through a lot of voluntary organisations, including Victim Support, and did train the trainer qualifications and have trained volunteers and staff for many years now. And I just love it. I absolutely love the buzz that I get from people coming in, and then seeing how things progress and what they learn, and how the little light goes on, that it all fits together and they understand it. I think is great.
Yes, I mean, I can feel your passion through the screen, and I've seen you in practice, so I would definitely agree and reiterate. You are a fantastic trainer in that respect. We've had a question come in, and we may have already answered it, so I'm just going to read it out to you, Sandra. It's from Helen, one of our volunteers. How much more difficult has it been to deliver training online and be able to judge applicants' reactions and suitability without being with them face to face?
Yes, I mean, obviously it is more difficult, and I think that's a really good question. But you can take steps to alleviate that situation, as much by training in smaller groups. I think that's really important, because if you train in a big group online, you can lose people. Whereas if you're in a small group, you can make sure that people are engaged, and you can make use of breakout rooms. So you can use that kind of technology. I'm very new at that. I mean, Beverly, who I, fortunately had with me while I was doing the training, and also thanks to Sam as well, it was a whiz at doing the breakout rooms, and that really helped.
Okay, well, that's good. So Beverly's our director, for those of you that have tuned in that are not familiar with CCSS, and Sam is our helpline manager, and the 3 staff members delivered the training recently online. I hope that answers your question, Helen. I'm just thinking about the future in terms of training, and I know we've got lots of new volunteers really eager to get out into the courts. Some of them are frustrated, and that's the message in terms of not being able to come on to the 3-day training course. So what are our plans as an organisation to help support them on their journey to becoming a volunteer in the court?
Well, obviously, it is a priority for us as soon as we can get back into the courts, for those that have recently joined us and haven't been able to go in and do observations, to get them back in there. I'm also trying to make sure that training volunteers are included in team meetings and Zoom meetings. We held a large meeting for all trainees, so that they could actually sort of chat and support one another and talk about how far they'd got on the observation stage and share that experience. And I think, again, it's about that communication. It's making sure that they feel included, and to reassure them that they are a priority for us, and that we will get that training sorted for them as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, that's very reassuring. Thank you, Sandra. I think we're coming to an end now in terms of the questions. Is there anything that final thoughts from you before I ask you one last question?
Thoughts from me is, I think, this whole campaign, and it's been a really good week, is that the theme is that we are here for you. And I think my message really is to the volunteers, or anybody who's thinking about volunteering for us, is that yes, we are here for you, and as much as we're here for people attending inquests, but I think the staff, all the coordinators, and that we are here for you, our volunteers, to be able to support you and make sure that you can deliver that service, because without you we couldn't do what we do.
Oh, that was so beautifully said, Sandra. And I think on that note, we're bringing the session to an end. So I just want to thank you for your very kind contribution, some information in terms of the training programme. So thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you for watching.